Friends, I want to talk tonight about a literary genre that I think doesn't get enough respect and attention from serious intellectuals, which is high fantasy. It might seem odd for me to say that fantasy doesn't get enough attention because it does have a big cultural impact. Some of the biggest screen events of recent times have been based on fantasy novels. Harry Potter, Dune, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, each reached millions and millions of viewers and generated immense profits for their creators. But the impact of fantasy is actually bigger than just profits because the genre has a tremendous influence on young people. The best illustration of that influence is the Harry Potter craze in the early 2000s. There are 7 books in the Harry Potter series, and the total length is more than 1 million words. Kids would stand in line at these midnight book releases to get their hands on the next installment in the series. And then they would lock themselves indoors and binge read the book in a matter of days. It was incredible to see a 12-year-old kid read a 400-page book in 3 days. I was a bit too old for Harry Potter, but fantasy novels had a big impact on my life as well. I mentioned a few times that I went to a quite prestigious college called Harvard, but it was a big surprise both to me and my friends that I got into Harvard. I was decently smart, but I wasn't a good student, and I especially wasn't a good student at English. Even though I didn't study, I still got good grades. I remember in 10th grade, my teacher would assign lists of advanced vocabulary words, but I never bothered to study them because I already knew what the words meant. And I attribute this ability at English skill to the fact that I read thousands and thousands of pages of fantasy novels. Here's a series I was really interested in as a teenager, The Wheel of Time. 14 books, over 4 million words, 7 times longer than War and Peace. Just an incredible volume of words. So what I want to figure out in this talk is what is the magic ingredient that makes this kind of literature so compulsively readable, especially to young people? The first ingredient is the setting. Fantasy novels are set in a mysterious, magical world. In this world, neither the reader nor the characters fully understands how the world works. In addition to the main stream of the narrative, the author will weave in observations and incidents that can't be explained. What was that strange light in the east on the morning of the battle? What was that eerie sound the characters heard as they were running away from the prison? These mysterious sights and sounds fuel our curiosity to want to keep reading. The second ingredient is the combination of action and intrigue. Obviously, fantasy novels almost always feature intense action scenes, sword fights, duels, battles of opposing armies. But they contain more than just action. They have espionage, assassination, diplomacy, political maneuvering. These story elements give us a more fully rounded depiction of dramatic human conflict. On the right there, you see Varys and Littlefinger, who are the 2 master schemers of the Game of Thrones. The next ingredient really broadens the appeal of fantasy to a wider section of the population, which is that women are given a very significant and impactful role. This slide shows Lady Jessica from Dune and Cersei Lannister from the Game of Thrones. These are both very compelling characters who have complex personalities and a huge impact on the course of the story. Building on the previous point, the next ingredient is that fantasy stories also feature young people, generally as the main characters. Now, in this case, you do have to suspend disbelief quite a bit, because in these stories, we have people who are basically teenagers changing the course of world history. In my view, that's not a terrible problem. It increases the appeal to the younger audience. It doesn't really reduce the enjoyment for the older viewers. Now, this point is actually quite subtle. The characters in fantasy novels are often very special and unique, but they're also relatable. They have some special trait that is inborn as a result of their birth. For example, they could be princes or princesses. Maybe they were born with magical powers. Maybe their birth was foretold by a prophecy. But in spite of these hereditary innate gifts, the characters are still relatable. They have fears, they have doubts, they can be silly, they have problems that normal people might have. On the left, we have Merry and Pippin from The Lord of the Rings. They're basically just fun-loving guys who like to drink beer and sing songs. On the right, we see an important theme in the Harry Potter series, which is that Harry gets bullied by this rich, mean kid named Draco Malfoy. So even though Harry has these incredible powers and amazing destiny, he still gets bullied by mean kids, which makes him very relatable. This ingredient is very easy to explain. Huge monsters, dragons, sandworms. These are fun to read about. They're fun to imagine in your mind's eye. Doesn't take a lot of explanation to understand why this is a nice, fun feature. And finally, the most important ingredient, I think, is that these stories depict characters in an epic struggle of good against evil. It's not just a petty trade dispute. It's not a minor border skirmish. It's a world-changing conflict of good against evil. Friends, fantasy novels combine a number of ingredients that make them compulsively readable, especially to young people. They're located in a magical setting that the reader feels deep curiosity to learn about. The characters are special, but they're easy to relate to, and they appeal to girls as well as boys. There's constant action and intrigue. The story never drags, and the fate of the world hangs in the balance. So if you are in the mood for an entertaining and thought-provoking adventure, or if you know some teenage kids who love to read, I definitely recommend a fantasy novel. Thank you very much.